Hi there. Welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I'm really excited for this conversation. I have Todd Sarner with me. Todd, welcome.
Hi, good to see you. Really good to be with you.
I'm so excited. We were talking a little bit before we hit record about where we were going to go with this conversation. And I think it's going to be very helpful and enlightening for those of you listening. So
Well, let's hope so. The challenge will be, I have a feeling we could go on for hours, and maybe people don't want that right now, but we'll do our best.
I'm going to use all my executive function to keep us to the usual 20 to 30, maybe 35 minutes. We'll see how it goes.
Excellent.
Tell the good people a little bit about yourself and the kind of work that you do, and then we'll dive into attachment, which is what we're talking about today.
Excellent. Excellent. Wow. I answer that differently every time. I wanted to be a therapist from the time I was like 13 years old. My parents kind of had a messy divorce, and we all had to go see a therapist, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I just could talk and be heard, and it was really something that I just so valued. I set my sights. I wanted to be a therapist. And all through graduate school, I thought what that meant was I was going to work with kids. I wanted to work with kids, teens. I did some work in foster and adoptive care before I graduated. I worked in group homes with teenage boys. And I was really focused on working with kids. And then something changed. I think it started with having families come to me, and remember one in particular that I won't go into deep detail about, but it was really clear to me that this family was coming in and saying, "This child's the problem. This child's the problem," and it was just obvious to me, and without judging anybody. I love the vibe of your show, Gabrielle, and the non-judgmental nature that you look at things through. It's not about judging, but it was just so clear to me it's it's not this kid's problem. The kid is the canary in the coal mine. The kid is the one who's the most sensitive, and he's just demonstrating the kind of things that are not in alignment in the family. And that was the first seed. But then becoming a father myself, almost 22 years ago, and then being really deeply influenced by my mentor, Dr. Gordon Neufeld. I read his book, Hold On to Your Kids, when my kid was one, and it just brought everything together. The training and the education and the experience. You go through grad school and they teach you this theory and that theory and this theory and that theory. They don't teach you like a unified theory, and that's what I got from Neufeld's work was attachment is the key. There's so many important things, but attachment is the main thing. And it hit me like a ton of bricks when Gordon would talk about you are the answer for your child. The parent is I get choked up 20 years later saying that. And I do this every day.
Yeah.
But, and I went, yeah, like it's not that therapy isn't helpful for children. It was for me. But for the most part, I think parents are meant to be the answer. So I kind of switched my practice to parent coaching and focusing on helping empower parents. And I've been doing that for 21 years or so now. I didn't even know if I wanted to completely get my license at first because I didn't have my license yet when I went into it. But then I decided, no, I can do more things. I can become a couples counselor for parents too
Yeah.
and help from that angle.
Yeah.
But the lens in both is attachment. Is that the main thing with kids is attachment. The main thing with adult relationship is also attachment. That people have all sorts of symptoms, but it's usually there's something wrong with the bond, something that needs to be attended to. So was that a long enough answer for you?
I love that answer. I have goosebumps all over.
Oh, good.
And I really would like for you to define attachment because, and I want you to define it hopefully in direct opposition to attachment parenting,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
not, well, you tell us, but
I will give you my yeah.
Please.
It's such a great question because I actually find myself I get calls all the time because I've been doing this for a while, and I always ask people in that first conversation, "What do you know about attachment?" And sometimes when they say nothing, I go, "Oh, good. I don't have to." And it's not. There are so many people. We could go on for so long with all the different amazing Dr. Neufeld, Sue Johnson, Dan Siegel, all these people that you could say no, they put out solid work, and but I think in the mainstream, sometimes on parenting blogs and things, it's been made to be helicopter parenting or overdoing it parenting, or you have to do this exact thing. And if you don't do this exact thing, you're not a good enough mother. And that's really what it is. It's not good enough father. They don't say that most of the time. Time magazine had a cover, I think it was the late 90s, that said, "Are you mom enough?" And it showed a mom kind of walking around the kitchen with a kid that looked like he was 6, breastfeeding on demand on a stool. And they on purpose made this kid look older, like, "Are you still breastfeeding when they're 9?" So I can go off on a tangent. I love Dr. Neufeld's definition that I still quote. I learned from him, became one of the first interns in his professional training program. I was a faculty member at the Neufeld Institute for a few years. His teaching is so foundational, and I still go back to his definition of attachment. And it's the drive, the instinct that we are all born with to hold close and to keep close to those that we hold most dear.
Hmm.
It's a very precise definition. And what's really important about it is it's not thought out. Whether you're 3 or you're 45 or you're 54, attachment is an instinct, it is a drive. And most of our children's behavior is not, "Hey, you know what? I think later on I'm going to drive mom insane by refusing to get my shoes on," right? That's not what it is. It's always
Oh,
it's
man.
always an instinct. I don't want to go to school. I'm going to miss mommy. I feel attachment anxiety right now. I if I just stay here, I won't have to experience that. I won't put on my shoes because putting on my shoes means, right? It's always deeply embedded in an attachment instinct, and it is critical for parents to understand that because if you see it as on purpose, you try to bend and shape it. If you see it as an instinct, you try to work with the instincts. Sorry to go on and on.
No, but what I want to jump in here and say is implicit in that definition, or the thing that that definition does not have, is a bunch of how to's. And
No,
that's what I love about it also, because I told a couple this 30 minutes ago. What you do, the way in which you have a relationship with your child or any other human for that matter, the specifics really don't matter.
one, yes,
Whether your child goes to bed at 7 o'clock or at 10 o'clock, and we can argue about the particulars of like how much sleep kids need. But
hmm
if your child gets adequate sleep, their bedtime doesn't matter.
right,
Okay.
right, and to be flexible, yeah.
There is sometimes an amount of flexibility that's required. Now, am I giving a permission slip to like put your kid to bed at 10 and wake them up at 6? No, I am not. Okay. But am I saying that if your schedule permits and your child is allowed to sleep the requisite 12 hours and they do that, does it matter if they go to bed at 10? No, it does not.
Right. And that's the problem with so much of, again, there's so much great attachment stuff out there. In the clinical world, in the academic world, attachment is not controversial. It's not. It's taught at UC Berkeley, it's taught at UCLA, it's taught at Harvard. UC Davis has an adult attachment lab. It's accepted in the academic community, but it doesn't say you must do this for this long for this. The root of it is the primary thing is this understanding that the number one determinant of how our kids become secure in relationships in life, the number one determinant of how they behave every day, and the number one determinant of how they grow into their greatest potential, which is my main reason for getting up in the morning and doing this work is the potential of the child, is how secure they're meant to feel in their primary relationships growing up. Now, that does not mean perfect parenting, and I love, love, love how you emphasize that in your podcast. It doesn't exist. Um, I remember reading studies that said up to 60 to 70% of the time in secure bonding relationships that there's misattunement, that it happens, that your child smiles at you and you happen to have turned away just before that, and it's not your fault. You have other things going on, but they would go misattunement, right? On the little chart. But it's not perfect parenting. It's I know that my kids' security and them developing what Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby called the secure base is the main thing. It's the master key. And over time, like you and I discussed, it doesn't just happen. It's from the time they're born completely insecure to the time we send them off into the world, hopefully not a completed project, but in a good place, that they need thousands and thousands of reps of when they're, I feel not enough. I feel too much. I'm sick. I'm scared. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. That we meet that with a you are loved, you are great, you are special, you are not too much, you are not enough, and I'm going to do my best. And if I make a mistake, I'll fix it. But it takes thousands of reps of that. It doesn't just happen. And that's why I think parents need to stay in the position of what Neufeld calls the alpha parent, that you are the answer for your child, not you, not me, not any author, but we are. And too often in the attachment blog sphere and stuff, it's made to be about a particular thing you do. And
Yeah.
anybody who has multiple children knows that's not a thing, you know?
They're
So
all
anyway,
different. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, they're all different,
There are
different
several
needs.
strands that I want to pick here. I can already hear
Of
the
course.
audience thinking, but
Okay.
my child is never going to be securely attached. I don't have enough to give them to make them feel securely attached. And the thing we talk about on this podcast are the complicated ones. These are the ones the children whose tanks are never full, and parents whose tanks are also getting emptier and emptier, who are trying to fill this need. So what's happening there? What do we do about it? How do you help parents navigate this? Because I
Oh,
know
that's
that
a
you do.
very big question. How many hours did you say we? Um, look, when I try to put a lot of things out there in the world, articles, YouTube videos, free things here and there, talks. My main thing is a process that I work through with people, and I think that it's meant to be seen as a culture that we're building in our home. That I think it's too difficult and too much of a burden to think you are going to do every single thing to make this child secure completely. That's a lot. And so, what I think we are struggling with a lot as modern parents is we don't necessarily have the culture built out around us that supports us in doing this job. That parents are the number one answer for their kids, but you're meant to be supported by cultural norms and practices that support the attachment. You're meant to be taught things handed down from grandmother to mother to father to son. You're meant to have structure and ritual and knowings, things that my friend Kim John Payne talks about a lot in his Simplicity Parenting and other work that he does. And you're meant to have attachment friendly strategies for handling behavior. But most of all, you need a narrative that works. And if the narrative is discipline is what you do to your child to make them stop doing something that you don't want them to do, that is a never ending game of whack a mole. It has to be about, the root word of discipline is the same as disciple in Latin. It's about being proactive, it's about structures and rituals and routines. So, getting back to your question, I see it as three different phases of understanding that support attachment. One thing I would say first, though, is to those parents that are feeling that way, understand that you are parenting a sensitive child. whether they are diagnosed with something or fit within the neurodiverse in definitions, or you're just the parent calling me with three kids, but you're calling me mostly about that one sensitive kid first, maybe the canary in the coal mine kid, is sensitivity is real and sensitivity is awesome. The most brilliant, amazing, empathetic, creative people are sensitive, but it's a little harder to walk them through that process I just explained. And so we have to be patient, but we also have to use these three different kind of realms to support it. So in the first one, attachment and connection. Everything we can learn about getting connected with kids, about meeting their deeper needs, about helping them connect with others that we leave them in the charge of. Neufeld calls it bridging. Matchmaking, sorry.
Mm.
Helping them feel connected even when they're not with us. A kid can't be secure in life if they have to be with us the whole time. It's a very
Right.
valuable thing to understand. They have to learn how to be comfortable with other people that we trust. And we do that through bridging separation times, and we do that through matchmaking them with people. And those are all things that form a culture around our child that keeps, I use the analogy a lot of a cup
Yeah.
that's full. When the cup is pretty full, not perfect, but pretty full, a child is easier to parent. They move with you. They want to be guided. When they're low in their attachment, it means that they're going to be difficult. They're going to be expressing their needs in inconvenient ways. And our job is to build a culture around them that keeps that cup more full more often.
Yeah.
And does that make sense as far as
Yeah,
like the first thing? And I
absolutely.
just feel like parents, a lot of times they're like, hey, I spend a lot of time with my child. That's wonderful. But I also notice those same parents sometimes doing what we all do, sometimes taking for granted
Hmm.
that the attachment is currently on with their
Hmm.
child.
Hmm.
The younger they are, the more sensitive. Them not having a functioning prefrontal cortex means that if they're concentrating on something, we don't have their attachment energy. We have to go and get it,
Yeah.
right? And that is so critical, but so overlooked. We think, I'm a good parent. We had a good day. Things were going fine this morning. I got my kid. But that kid, if their attention is somewhere else, we have to gather it. And
Hmm.
that was one of the most valuable things that Neufeld talks about. But also in that realm, there's deeper needs going on, like a 3.5 to 4.5 year old. My last client this morning had a 4 year old. They have this deep need to feel special and to feel unique. And you could spend 10 hours with them. But if you don't scratch that itch, or if you're spending all your time with them and the other kids, it doesn't quite get to it. But a story where you're just talking about the day they were born and how amazing it was and how overcome with joy you were, and the kids just bursting like, oh my, lighting up. Well, that meets the need in a way that 10 hours of hanging out might not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to tell my kids every night at bedtime, we used to make a list of all the people who love them.
Yeah.
So there would be this point in the evening, I would say, who loves you? Mommy loves you, daddy loves you. And it would go right from inside the house out into the world. And it strikes me that what you're saying in terms of like who's around, that's part of
Yeah.
it. But then also this feeling of being at the center, of being adored, unconditional positive regard has a place here, right? Where
Carl
it's like,
Rogers, my favorite. Yeah.
you are the most and the best at just being you. You haven't done anything. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you do.
Yeah. And you're pointing out from my perspective, part of why that works
Mm-hmm.
is this such a simple fundamental thing that we don't always get taught as parents. I didn't know when I became a parent, and I had a six-figure investment in education at that point. But Neufeld describes it as kids focus on separation. So if here's where we're together and here's where we're going to be back together, but in the middle you're at school or your daycare somewhere else, we all tend to do this, but kids especially do it, and sensitive kids especially do it. is we look at the separation part. That's why kids sometimes love their teacher and love their school, but they're not focused on that. They're focused on, I'm going to miss mommy too much, right? Because they're going, I'm going to be away from mommy. So we have so much power to help them focus on you're loved here, you're loved there, right? And so instead of that vacuum,
Mhm.
you're filling it
Mhm.
with something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're helping, and that's what bridging is kids focus on, oh, I'm going to miss you while I'm at school. Bridging is talking about what we're going to do after school,
Mhm.
talking about how I was thinking about you at lunch,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And it gets kids starting to look forward to reunion instead of looking at the
Mhm.
separation part.
Mhm. Yep.
But then the second part, and I won't say as
Mm.
much, but the second part is what I mentioned before: structures, rituals, knowing, predictability, not some rigid thing, but how do teachers of young children survive? It's they have lots of structure and knowing. We know today is this day, we know tomorrow is that day, we know we do this, then we do that.
Yeah.
I find a lot of the parents I work with either on the one hand have a lot of lack of structure,
Mhm.
or they have kids that are overbooked
Yep.
and going from this to that to this to that, and they don't get downtime. They don't get rest. So I talk to people about that a lot and put out a lot of information about the importance of structure and predictability and rhythm. And like I said, Kim John Payne does such an amazing job of talking about that in simplicity parenting and soul of discipline.
Mhm.
But then we have to have those attachment friendly responses to behaviors.
Mhm.
And the narrative that I look at behaviors with is behaviors are my child telling me that they're not feeling secure, they're feeling anxious perhaps, and they're displaying something they don't know how to do yet, right? And unfortunately from a young age sometimes we expect that they know how to do things that they don't know how to
Yep.
do. And so if I can have that lens of, okay, what are they showing me that they don't know how to do? My job is to be a guide and help them figure out what to do. My job is not to shame them or punish them for not knowing
Yep.
what to do. So I see building an attachment around children is all three of those things.
Mhm.
That the base of attachment and building the attachment culture, supporting it with structure and ritual and rhythm and consequences even that are about teaching cause and effect in a loving way, not a
Mhm.
punishing way,
Yep.
and then having responses to discipline and behavior that don't push away the child by taking things away or shaming or guilting, because that just affects all of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's about that whole picture. It's not about just one thing from any of them. Did that make any sense?
It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And I think it's really helpful to have those buckets outlined. Implicit in what you're saying about the third bucket, in which we are teaching skills because we see that child is engaging in air quotes, well, it is behavior that is perhaps undesirable, hard to manage, whatever. Implicit in that bucket is a level of emotional immaturity or a lack of experience with how to process difficult emotion. And so I think what I want you to talk about here a little bit is how, and I can hear it in your language, you tell me if you use this language, but parents as emotion coaches, number one. But number two, this idea that many adults have not been taught how to feel their own feelings. We engage in a lot of behaviors ourselves that are socially acceptable, and perhaps invisible to other people, but that I mean, and specifically, we self-soothe with food, we self-soothe with it, with Netflix, with the internet,
Yeah.
um, to avoid feeling our feelings. And so, how I think for me, the question is always like, how do we help adults get comfortable with their uncomfortable feelings so that they can help their children experience the child's uncomfortable emotions? Like that's a backstepping a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a big question too, and I'm not just saying that. I do think we could talk for 4 hours. I'm having a real Neufeld day. Earlier, when you were talking about what you do versus who you are, I thought of maybe my favorite quote by Dr. Neufeld when he said, "Parenting is about who you are to your child, not what you do. If you
Yes.
figure out what you are, who you're meant to be, the what to do's kind of unfold from that. But then another one got brought up here, and I don't go around quoting him all day, but today I am, um, is that if you learn what your child needs in terms of growing up, and you are that person for them that helps them learn what they need to grow up, you can't help but grow yourself up in the process. And that's kind of my high level answer to your question. And part of why I called my practice transformative parenting is the idea that there's so much potential to transform yourself by learning how to be the parent your child needs. So let's just take what I mostly got from your question, because there's a couple different paths
Yeah.
that we could take there. But let's just talk about aggression. And the foundation of this is from my learning with Neufeld. I saw a 5-day training he did for professionals on aggression back when I was just an intern of his. But we all have frustration in life. We all have difficult things that we experience. For adults, we think of it as like the bank account and the spiritual fulfillment and our relationships and what's going on in politics or whatever, a lot of this. For a child, it might be I didn't get to do that thing I wanted to, that I didn't quite get that attention I wanted to. This thing that I want to be able to do, I can't quite do yet, right? It's all these things. And there's another kind of cup, and that's the frustration bucket, or sometimes I call it the septic tank. Okay,
I
I
like
think I
that.
got that from Gordon as well originally, but I just find people remember that we all have this septic tank and it builds of frustration, little ones, medium ones, big ones. And if it's not expressed, if it's not felt and processed, it explodes. And that usually means aggression. And if I'm a parent who thinks my child crying or being upset is not good, so I should appease and not let them cry or just make them happy all the time, I'm missing the opportunity to help them with this process. And I think that's how I would answer your question.
Mhm.
What kids need is they need us to recognize, ooh, this kid is getting filled with foul frustration. They have a little bit too much going on. They're starting to be pokey. They're
Mhm.
starting to ask me for a cookie for dinner, which is ridiculous. Or they're asking, my kid once, swear to you, he was like 3. His mom and I both weren't doing the best job at getting the tears out. We were both tired. And we had raccoons digging up the backyard at night, like teaching their kids their to get bugs or something, and it was driving me crazy. My kid at like 9 o'clock at night, like an hour past his bedtime, we're all at wit's end. He goes, "I want to go out back and play with the raccoons." It's like, what the actual
Like,
right? And somehow it snapped me out of it, and I got firmer, and I
mm,
got no.
mm,
No, you are not. I love you. You're amazing. I've had such a great day with you, but no. But I want to go. No. And it's these energies that Neufeld talks about being firm and clear
mhm,
and consistent, but also being empathetic and not one or the other, both.
yeah.
And that there's something in there. If you learn to do the dance, if you learn to do it in the moment based on not something you read in a book, but on your knowledge of this kid and your feeling for where they're at, and you get good at that, which everyone can get good at,
Mhm.
they feel their feelings, and that's what my kid did that day. He cried and he cried and he cried because I just was being the meanest daddy in the world and I wouldn't let him go play with the raccoons. And he cried and he got it out. And then what did he do? You know this. As a mother and as a professional, he went, I love you, daddy. I'm going to go to sleep. And it's like, what the actual, again, and it's because all this energy had to be felt and it had to be processed and it had to be moved through. And it usually moves through with a good cry, with a good, not a tantrumy cry. I'm still trying to change your mind when
Mhm.
I'm tantruming. A
Mhm.
good release, getting it all out cry. How do we feel? How do you feel?
Yeah.
clean,
Relaxed. That's right.
better.
Yeah.
You come up with your best idea you've had in a month. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, I see this thing from a different, right? Kids need that. So, doesn't it stand to reason that we do too? And that what if they have a full septic tank and we have a full septic tank? That's not going to work out.
Mhm.
Now, instead of being able to recognize, hey, this is where my kid is, I need to be here, I need to be present, I need to be firm but empathetic, I'm just using it as a way to get out my frustration, right? And the
Mhm.
best of us have been there,
Yeah.
okay? So I think the education of understanding what we're talking about,
Mhm.
understanding it's not the kids all of a sudden just being an unreasonable, horrible being, that they are saying, Mother, Father, I have far too much frustration to tolerate at present. I don't know what to do about it. The best I can figure is to say something completely ridiculous to really irritate you so that you might engage me in a dance of emotion that I might release what is hard for me to release on my own, right? They can't say that.
I
They just
love
say,
that
let me
so
play with
much.
the raccoons right now.
Right.
And so, if we can recognize that moment, we know what our role is, we know that they need us,
Mhm.
then we are there for them. But then maybe, like the great movies that I am talk about when I'm explaining this to parents, like Goodwill Hunting,
Mhm.
that Goodwill Hunting was kind of about the same process.
Mhm.
Kid with an abuse history, brilliant but angry, court appointed therapy because he hit people, and Robin Williams bonds with him, gets an attachment, gets his trust, and then is able to help him feel the feelings
Mhm.
that he had such a hard time feeling on his own. The it's not your fault, it's not your fault, which led to a cry, a release, and at the end of the movie you're like, oh, he's going to have a better life now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So as parents, if we cannot work out our own stuff actually with our kids, that's not their job. We help them, but then we in our life, whether it's through therapy, friends, talks like this, we realize where we need to cry, where we need to feel our feelings, where we need to process them.
Yeah.
And it's the inspiration of parenting that I think often leads to that.
Woof. Todd, I do feel like there are about 6 episodes at least in there that we could have gone real deep. And for now,
Let's
we're gonna.
go. Let's go.
Well,
I'll
I know
cancel the rest of my day.
I'm
Let's
gonna have you back because I do think that that we could do that, and that would be fun.
Well,
Um,
thank you for having me. And I just want to express such sincere gratitude, like I said before, that you handle these complex issues in a way that's non-judgmental and fun and understanding. And I just think there's not enough of that out there. And so anytime I hear a kindred spirit putting that out in the world and with a voice like yours, I just appreciate you so much. And thank you for having me to
thank
talk to your
you.
audience.
That is delightful. If people want to know more about you, what do they do?
Website, www.transformativeparenting.com. I have a YouTube channel that I love that I started when I was in Japan a couple years ago, Transformative Parenting with Todd. And we have a master class that we put out to give an overview of our philosophies, which is www.masterclassforparents.com. Is that enough?
Perfect. Yes, we will
All the
link
socials are there too,
all the
but I just don't
social.
have enough time for those sometimes. So
Perfect. We will link to at least those three in the show notes. And Todd, until next time, thank you.
until next time, see you later.